Good evening, everyone.
Want to dress better?
Welcome to our second series of the housing seminar hosted by our Swampscott Senior Center. My name is Marissa Meany. I am the Land Use and Development Planner in the Office of Community and Economic Development in Town Hall. I'm joined here by my colleagues tonight, Heidi Weir, Director of our Senior Center, and Sabrina Clopton, Assistant Director of our Senior Center. Also here is David Grishman from the Select Board. And before we kick off tonight's presentation, I just wanted to make a preliminary announcement about our session next Monday, October 7th, same time, same place. We will be talking all about accessory dwelling units, maybe more commonly known as in-law apartments. I will be part of that panel, and we will be joined by Derek Thomas from Incremental Developers in Salem, as well as a local resident, May Cadigan, who herself lives in an accessory dwelling unit. And moderating that panel will be Ted Dooley, our chair of the planning board. But to moderate our session is Kim Martin-Epstein tonight. She is the chair of the Swampscott Affordable Housing Trust. So I will turn it over to her to introduce us to our panelists and kick us off.
Hi. Hopefully you can hear me. I have a pretty loud voice too, but before I do all of the introductions, I would like to start the event today, an event at which we are discussing our use of our land, development, redevelopment, and community making with a land acknowledgement. I also note that we're almost upon the day that this town and many other towns in the Commonwealth have designated Indigenous Peoples Day. Land acknowledgements are derived from and are rooted in Indigenous diplomacy. They were a way for tribes to acknowledge the land when visiting or encountering other tribes. As a non-native person, I'm not in a position to pay a diplomatic homage to the tribes whose homelands homelands on which we now meet. I'm more appropriately acknowledging that European colonists violently took dominion over this region and divested the Massachusetts and Naumkeag people of their territory. I also recognize that descendants of these tribes and other New England native people carry the burden of intergenerational occupancy of their unceded land. May our work today and beyond tonight's meeting endeavor not to exacerbate that injustice. This, or any land acknowledgement, does not get us off the hook for the appropriation of the land and also lack of action, but it does begin to address the education and awareness building goal. And I know we are in a room of people who are interested in talking about the needs of vulnerable people, vulnerable neighbors, doing right by doing good, and maybe even righting wrongs. So let us go forward tonight in that spirit. Tonight I'm going to have each of the other panelists introduce themselves briefly and give you a taste of what we're going to be discussing in each case, and then I'm going to start with some preliminary definitions and kind of concepts that help us talk about some of these projects that we're doing in town with a little bit more facts and specificity. So I'll start over here with Holly Grace from B'nai B'rith Housing.
Hi, can you hear me? No?
Not sure how these
Stay
work.
closer.
So, hi, my name is Holly Grace. Oh, no.
Do you have to hold it?
Push the button.
Okay.
Oh.
So my name's Holly Grace. Okay, they can hear me in the back. I work as a senior project manager with B'nai B'rith Housing, and this evening we will be talking about our work in Swampscott at the Michon and our future work to create veterans housing.
I have Kevin Johnson from the Swampscott Housing Authority.
Hi, I'm Kevin Johnson, the Executive Director of the Swampscott Housing Authority. I run all the state-aided public housing in Swampscott.
Next. Hi, my name is Joe Tiefalt. I'm a divisional vice president with Wynn Residential. So I'm in the property operations, and myself and my team will be involved in the lease-up and future operations of the Westcott Apartments, opening up next spring, summer, right down the street here. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lauren Canapari with Wynn Development. I work with Joe. I'm on the development side at Wynn, and we are excited about the Westcott opening right down the street.
So I have this kind of running list that I update and change whenever I do these kinds of meetings. And it's, definitions and acronyms and things that, people in the housing industry just use and throw off their tongue all the time. And we realize that, without any regular knowledge of these, this conversation just becomes a lot of gobbledygook. So I wanted to insert some definitions initially, and then kind of help guide this conversation with some things that, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but I think it's really good to kind of have these frameworks. So the first thing I wanted to do is define what I like to talk about when I talk about affordable housing. Everybody should live in affordable housing. That is, everybody should live in housing that does not cost burden them beyond a certain percentage of their income. I think the guidelines that we use in the United States is 30% of your disposable, your net income should not be spent, more than 30% of your income should not be spent when it comes to your housing costs. So if you're spending more than 30%, you're cost burdened. So everybody, whether you're earning something more like 100% of the area median income or more, or whether you're barely making ends meet, your housing costs should not exceed 30% of whatever it is you do make. So when we talk about affordable housing, we're talking about housing that people can afford in this framework. I know we throw around some different definitions, and it gets kind of gobbled. A lot of times people refer to low-income housing, and to me it's not the same thing as affordable housing. Affordable housing is this concept where people can afford to live in their home, and low-income housing is a very specific designation. It targets a very particular income level, and in general, we are not able to develop low-income housing without the use of development and operational subsidies. And what do I mean by subsidies? I mean money that comes from a public body to either buy down the cost of building it so that the developer can charge lower rents and be able to pay back their construction loan. So either, and or operational subsidies, which is something everyone's often familiar with, like Section 8. A Section 8 contract will allow the landlord to receive an aggregate of fair market rents, but the tenants who are living in the subsidized units pay only 30% of their income at some income level. So we have operational subsidy, and we have development subsidy, and we cannot build housing for people whose incomes are considered low income without subsidy. And that's an economic fact that we are all, becoming painfully aware of. So today we're talking about all of it, any and all of it. If definitions come up, I might jump in and help you clarify them. I know we're going to talk about tenant selection. We're going to, in Michon, in future developments, we're going to talk about it for the Housing Authority. We're going to talk about it for the Westcott, and so we'll have a little bit of conversation about tenant selection and fair housing so people understand how that tends to work. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Kevin. You're first.
I'm first? Oh, boy.
So we'd love to hear about the Housing Authority, and I think it's important to distinguish the Housing Authority from privately developed affordable housing, such as the Michon or the Westcott, and it's really important. I think people understand the difference about what the Housing Authority owns and does, and how you're organized and run.
So I would say that there are three different types of housing developments. There's the private developers. There's the federal, for instance, like Lynn. Lynn Housing Authority is a federal housing authority. And then you have what's called state-aided in Massachusetts. There are only 3 states in the nation that actually have their own housing authority, state-aided housing authorities. There's a little bit in New York, there's a little bit in Connecticut, but it actually got divested from the state, and then Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, we have, I think it's close to 44,000 units of state-aided public housing throughout the Commonwealth.
And so people understand what properties is under the purview of the Swampscott Housing Authority.
So we actually have 4 different properties. One's Ryan Place, which is a communal housing situation, which is right on Ryan Place Street. Then we have our family housing, and you'll get this, each one of them has a project number. We actually call that our 200 project, which is family housing. And that's been around since right after the Second World War. It was built back in 1947. Then we have Duncan and then Doherty, which is right next to the Wynn property. So,
Kevin, can you talk a little bit about how one becomes a tenant of the Housing Authority property?
so okay, there's a separation. I think that there's a lot of misnomers or misconceptions. We get a lot of calls from people saying, oh, where's my number on the list? In Massachusetts, you have the Section 8 programs and the federal housing programs, and those are actually the numbered list. And right now in Massachusetts, it's 10 years for someone to get on actual federal housing programs. And then in the state's done a really good job of prioritizing needs. So the state list is based off a priority of needs, and there's certain priorities. Say if a person's a veteran, say if someone's a Silver Star mother, or someone has some sort of medical issue, or if they actually live in the town where the housing authority is. So the state uses a third party called ASG that sets those preferences. And it used to be that the housing authorities used to do that, and a lot of the housing authorities got overwhelmed. So we've outsourced a lot of that. There's a website you can go to, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it, called CHAMP, where you can fill out, and you can fill out as many different housing authorities as you want. What?
What is that? Can you spell that?
CHAMP. CHAMP.
C-H-A-M?
Yep.
CHAMP.
Yep. And that's really where you sign up for public housing. We really cannot touch people until they come on our poll list. And that's based off of needs and priorities, what the housing authority needs and what the priorities for the people being selected are. So, yeah. Is it
And
good?
what, I know that the Housing Authority property in Swampscott has been around a while, and it definitely could use some love. What, and I would like to talk about this a little bit more after everyone's had their presentations as well, but maybe just give us a little taste of, kind of some of your goals and what you're thinking of in terms of, how we can care for our Housing Authority property.
One of the biggest issues, at least in Swampscott, and we see this in our vouchers, and I've mentioned this before, right now we have close to about 60,000 individuals on our list for Swampscott. What's the population of Swampscott?
15,000.
15,000. So, there's a huge need, not just in the region, but also in the community, for state housing or public housing. We are looking at doing some different developments. We've been working with the town, looking at trying to find some funding for a study, possibly doing some redevelopment on our properties. So, and it does take time. Usually a normal public housing project, and Wynn would know this better than anyone, usually takes about 4 to 5 years from the conception to finding the financing to putting the shovels to the ground. That's about average. So, and now's the time to kind of look at that.
Yeah, thank you. Holly.
Okay. I have some slides.
Holly has a few slides, and then, also we'll talk a little bit about we'll talk a little bit what you've done and a little bit about what you're hoping to do.
So thanks. I work with B'nai B'rith Housing, and B'nai B'rith Housing is a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to ease the housing crisis in the Boston area. I work as a project manager for the organization, and so I work on new developments to try to find sites, get them permitted, get them financed through a variety of sources, constructed and leased up. So it's a lot of teamwork that goes with that. And did my slides disappear?
The screen just said, looks like something went wrong, so that's always a great message.
Uh-oh. They're not really crucial, but they're fun to look at. There's some nice, pretty pictures.
Round 2. Okay.
All right, so we're ready for the next one.
it doesn't want me to go to the next one. There it is.
Okay, so here are some photos of a mix of the developments that we've worked on in the Boston area. These aren't all in Swampscott. And our organization has worked on a variety of different housing types that include a mixed income, which maybe needs a definition, but includes a variety of income types.
Right. When we talk about income levels, we're talking about how people's income fits in with what has been designated as an area median income. So HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, creates these metropolitan statistical areas and then figures out what the median incomes are for those areas. And so when we set income levels and then rent levels for geographic areas, it's based on this information that we receive from HUD. So typical income bands that are addressed in affordable housing are, people who are at 30% or lower of the area median income. That's very, very, very low income. And people, 50, there's some federal programs that look at the 50% AMI band. Tax credit projects, low-income housing tax credit projects really are targeting the 60% band. We have a lot of other federal, not so much federal, state and local programs that like to target 80%. We've got workforce housing, it's a word we use now, which is at 100% to 110% AMI. So, when we're talking about mixed income, you can still have all the units restricted to different income levels and still have people, targeting people who really need income restricted housing. But even if you're at 100% of the AMI, you're going to be cost burdened without restricted rents, I think, in this region. So that's what a mixed income project would have a variety of income levels, and also nicely, usually a variety of bedroom sizes, and you can't, and the lovely part is you can't tell what's what, and everybody's living together, and the housing quality standards require that, and so mixed income projects are really exciting because you really get everyone, you get a lot of different varieties in a particular development. So, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So back to B'nai B'rith Housing, we've worked on a variety of different housing types, including mixed income, thank you, affordable senior, including here in Swampscott, and affordable housing for all ages. And if we have some more pretty pictures on the next slide, cross your fingers it works. Okay. And we, like many other private developers, work hard to make sure the designs of our buildings and units are competitive and attractive as compared to market rate units elsewhere that are not affordable with these income restrictions. So these are some photos of developments we've recently completed. Next slide, please. So something that's a hallmark of our organization, B'nai B'rith Housing, is our resident service component. This is really important to our board members and me as a staff person. We think it is very helpful to have resident service coordination for the folks that live in our developments, in our buildings. So what does this mean? Here are a few photos showing there's a party, some gardening, some outdoor spaces that kind of look nice and busy. Next slide, please. So I tried to zero in on some of the aspects of a resident service coordination. And typically, we have a staff person that works in the building and can meet with residents who basically helps residents who are living in our buildings to access services or extra help as needed. And I guess an interesting and sometimes puzzling aspect of this is the resident service coordinator doesn't actually do the helping, but links the residents to other service providers that are experts in whatever is needed. So there's an on-staff position that During pandemic times, these folks were instrumental in helping making sure our residents were as comfortable as possible. There was some grocery delivery and things to help with those very scary times. Links to service providers who help working with the populations in our buildings. Things like fitness classes, either taught by the resident service coordinator or bringing in extra help or extra expertise to do those. Organizing things like group trips and health and fitness wellness screenings. So there's often flu shot clinics or blood pressure screenings, especially in our senior developments, and celebrations. So an important part of having the resident service coordinator position is to help with social programming as well as wellness programming and things as people, I guess, are residing in our buildings and in senior buildings as they're aging. We also have resident service coordination in family developments, and they help families with all sorts of issues that they might have with child care, job situations, financial planning, things that are more targeted towards, I guess, their population. Next slide, please. So here in Swampscott, I had the I guess, privilege of working on the Michon School. And the town, very wisely, had an RFP process regarding this once vacant school. And timing on this, I'm not quite certain, but the school had been vacant the first time I'd seen it. We toured it, there were spiders, there were puddles in the basement, wasn't pretty. So the town, in its wisdom, went through a process to find a developer to do something with the school, and B'nai Housing competed for the privilege of doing that, and we were selected. And these are some before photos of the Michon School. So as you can see, it was an old school, and there's a historic building. I guess approximately 1920 was the vintage on that, if I'm remembering this correctly. And there is a 1950s addition to it. So this is what we had under agreement when we got the RFP. We worked closely with the town to design it, permit it, and get financing for it. And the next slide, please. Here are some photos of what it, looks like after, with very attractive units. Especially in the old school building component, which has extremely high ceilings and big windows, and it's great. But also an addition that we put in the place in this approximately same location as the 1950s addition had been, but still appointed very nicely and attractively. And we have resident service coordination for the building. So the Michon has 38 units. They are for households with someone aged 55 and older, and it's fully leased right now with a waiting list of approximately 100 names. And I guess good news, bad news, the list is still open if anyone wants to add their name to that, although it's a question of when those names would come up, because there is a lot of demand for affordable housing, as we all know. Next slide, please. So we are working closely with the town on another site in Swampscott that the town is wisely working to create affordable housing on. So this site is at Pine in New Ocean and called Veterans Crossing. And these are some photos taken recently. There's a vacant lot there, and they're located adjacent to the VFW that's currently in operation. And next slide, please. So we're working closely with town officials and staff, and our plan, we would love to build approximately 42-ish units, age restricted to 55 and older, to have a preference for veterans, and of course we would have resident service coordination. And included in that would be more emphasis on services that would be needed for veterans and links with veteran service providers. That concludes my slide presentation, but I'm happy to answer questions whenever
Yeah, let's
like to do
pause
that.
for some questions now, and then we're going to go on, and next, we're going to talk about the Westcott and what Wynn has been doing. So this is a good time to start with some questions. Go ahead. Oh, wait, microphone, I think we have.
What will be the income required to qualify for one of the Benebra units on Pine Street?
The question was, if you could talk to some of the income,
Yep.
the income limits that will be identified in the upcoming development.
So details yet to be determined, but our current thinking is that the maximum income will be 60% of area median income. Does anyone have the matrix around what that means?
We're going to talk about that in our,
We do have it.
Perfect.
yeah.
So, oh, look at that.
Yeah, we will talk about that in our presentation too, all the different,
Sorry for skipping
kind of
ahead.
explain that, just,
okay.
no, I think for me, when people are just saying area median income, that's always, what exactly does that mean?
What does that mean?
Right?
Does it
You
mean
got the
that's
numbers. All right,
So
so just
we-
hold for that, and we'll get to those numbers. All right.
So,
Where do you sign up?
So this project is a concept right now. It's not, and unfortunately, it does take a very long time to go, again, from concept to, a ribbon cutting. So I think it's really hard to give details, and it's certainly, there's no opportunity to sign up for anything, but as the development of the financing and the development of the design is taking place, the town's going to hear a lot about it. But the town's already approved the use of the space for this project, so hopefully once we can release, when there's details to release, they'll be released.
Not sure.
anybody that would like to be added to the list or get an application to be added to the list can call the Michon. I have a phone number I can share with you if you would like that now. Okay. A woman named Arlette is our property manager there, and her, Arlette, Arlette, and her phone number is 781-584-8177. I'll repeat the whole thing. 781-584-8177.
You had a question over here, yeah.
Is this the Swampscott residents only?
It is not.
So let's just give a quick new definition or whatever. Let's talk about preferences for 1 sec, just because I want to answer this question. I'm just going to answer this question. When we talk, most communities, when you're using town property, really do try to impose a preference, a local preference. So we, try to figure out a way to prioritize Swampscott residents who fit all of these other criteria first. The constraints on a local preference and on and on some of the other preferences are what's called fair housing. There are federal fair housing requirements that are imposed on a project that is funding public money. So there's always a dance between, doing what the town wants, which is to prioritize Swampscott residents to these units, but also adhering to fair housing. And so there are ways that this works out. There's a housing plan that has to be approved by the state, and there's a tenant selection plan, and things have to be publicized. And certainly as qualified Swampscott residents come aboard, they're prioritized. But it's almost never the case that there's going to be 100% Swampscott residents, because not all Swampscott residents that apply are going to be able to fit the other criteria anyway. So there's a bit of a process, but almost every single project that the town has anything to do with is going to have a local preference in it.
I have a question about the income qualification. If I understand correctly, when you do what you call it a recertification, you take in consideration some expenses such as medical, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're referring to the income, are you referring to the gross or the net income after?
do you guys do, you know more about like the specifics of
I don't like to
income
give
certification?
politicky answers, but the answer is it depends. So if you're talking about a program, a subsidized program, as was referred to earlier, a Section 8 program, maybe a public housing program, there are cases where things like medical expenses are deducted to calculate tenant rent. When we talk about things like low-income housing tax credit program, we're talking about gross incomes and without deductions. But generally, when we talk about qualifying and what income you need when you're moving in, we're talking about gross incomes. Yes.
Thanks. All right, let's move on to,
Wonderful.
and then we'll have more time for more questions. So let's talk about the Westcott. I want to, in addition to what everybody's dying to know, which is when they can move in, I do want to bring up one other feature that has been present in our developments, and that's the use of zoning relief. And in this case, in the case of Michon, and in the case of the Westcott, we used Chapter 40B to allow for the denser use of the property, to have more units, to create more units of housing. So, and I know the 40B process is just one among the many challenges. So if you wouldn't mind giving a little bit of a discussion about that, and then we can.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. I think as people have said, the development process takes a long time, right? And there's many reasons it takes 5 years, 7 years, however long to get these buildings built. And a big part of that is zoning, right? 40B is a statute in Massachusetts. It really allows for developers to do by right zoning, which means, if we're going to put affordable housing into communities, the community can't say no because they don't like that, right? They don't want affordable housing in their community. It gives us the right to put affordable housing, basically as long as, with reasonable restrictions on it. And especially if the communities have less than 10% of their housing stock is considered affordable. So Swampscott has 4%, only 4% of their housing stock is considered affordable. So this is a high priority need for the state to get more affordable housing here. And that was how we were able to zone the Westcott, as we did, and obviously work closely with the town and the Affordable Housing Trust to do so. And I think it's been a great success to get 114 more units into Swampscott. And we do have a presentation too. We can.
We have a lot of slides. We'll try to get through them.
Yeah, we'll go quickly.
By chance, we were doing our lottery info sessions tonight, so this slide deck is from our info session. So we'll probably move through them relatively quickly. If we're taking too long, just let us know and we'll go faster, or if we go too fast, we'll go slower.
Yeah, we know there's a lot of questions, so we'll go to the end so we can get to questions. I think that's probably the most important thing. So I'm Lauren Canapari, Senior Project Director at WIN, and Joe is also here, who is our Divisional Vice President for Operations. So if you want to, you can go through. So, I won't go, I'm assuming a lot of people have seen the construction of the Westcott. It's new construction building right next to the Swampscott commuter rail station along the tracks there. 114 new units, studio, 1 and 2 bedrooms. It is mixed income. We're, hot button word we just talked about. In this case, it means we have units for people at 30% of area median income, at 60%, at 110%, and market rate units. So, 100% of area median income, that's the median that people are making in this area, right? So 30% we consider extremely low, 60% low, 110% is the workforce housing that Kim referred to, and then market rate, a small percentage of market rate units as well. So, I'll say one of the things we pride ourselves on at WIN is that everything looks like a market rate unit, right? Everything has the same finishes, the same amenities, and, you can see kind of it here, our, modern flooring, stainless steel appliances. We have a roof deck with grills, and we have a pet spa, and we have, all of the things you would expect from, we do have parking. We have 131 parking spaces for the 114 units. We have bike parking. We have EV chargers. So pretty much what you would expect from a market rate Metro Boston development, but, for a mix of income ranges. Here's a rendering of what the front entry will look like. We started construction last year. Construction is on time, on budget, completing, I guess I should knock on some wood, completing May of 2025. Should be our plan. The hope is that we're moving people in June. So that's kind of what we're aiming for right now. But I think it's going to be a really special project. You can keep going through these are just some renderings of what, when we went through the 40B process with the town, the town has say on, what does the building look like, right? Does it fit in? We want it to look coastal. We want it to look modern. We want it to fit in for Swampscott. Here's some of our amenity spaces. We have tenant lounges. We have work pods. We have lots of places for tenants to gather and for us to host events. Here's just a typical unit. You can see we have this, oak flooring and stainless steel appliances. It kind of all looks very modern. It's all an all-electric building. It's passive house, which means it's really the highest level of eco-friendly design that, you can do. So extremely well insulated, and really kind of keeping that green on the forefront of the design. So these are just the floor plans. We have some covered parking. We have exterior parking. This is the first floor. You can see some of that parking along with, we have some units where you can enter directly from the street, which will have little porches along the first floor along Pittman Road there. So you can kind of just go through quickly the floor plans, nothing too exciting. And then on the 5th floor, we have our roof deck, which is, another nice amenity space. But I'll let Joe talk about, how the lottery works. We did bring some applications with us here. And, applications are open now. The lottery is going to be
In January.
in January. And Joe's the expert, so I don't want to steal his thunder on
I
that.
am not an expert, but happy to talk about it. I think there were a couple questions before we move on to the next section. I know I saw one hand.
I just wondered if you can go, sorry. I'd like to know if you can go back to your rendering, and just put in where some streets are, so I can
Sure.
see where.
Oh, sure. So so this is 125 Essex Street, right? So we're at 200 Essex Street. So we're really
So you enter it like you would enter the Burke's Gym.
Right,
Driveway.
off of
That's-
Essex Street. Yeah.
right.
That's
right.
gonna be the
So
frontage.
this is where you see right here with these little porches or private entry units on
Yep.
on the right. That's Pittman.
Is that next little street next to?
That's Pittman.
driveway.
And then if you passed our sign and made a right, you go down to Burke's Gym.
So
Okay.
if you're coming, so if
That's
you're
Alice's.
coming,
So all of all the traffic will be on Essex Street. There's not another exit? I thought there was
there's the railroad
another
tracks
street.
behind it. There's
Yeah.
no street behind it.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
no-
You
was
turn
my
off
question.
Essex onto Elm and into our parking lot,
Right.
like you're going to Burke's Gym.
Yeah,
Same.
okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I may have missed it. Is this working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't really tell. What is the website for the Westcott where we can go get the schedule? What's on that screen right now?
Yes, it is. It's the Westcott, Swampscott.com. And if you go to that website, we will have all the information you need, including the application itself and this presentation within the next day or so.
And Marissa's writing it right up there, so
There you go.
everyone can see it a little
Such
bit
good
bigger.
writing.
I know,
Impressive.
it's great handwriting.
It's like an architect.
It's very good.
Yeah.
.com, right?
Yes.
Yes.
.com.
Question myself.
It does not.
No,
There's
no,
no
no
MA
MA.
in the address.
Just the Westcott, Swampscott.com.
Yes.
Right. Or if you Google it, you'll find it. You'll see it there. I think we meant to mention initially, and I'll say it now,
sorry.
that this property is not income restricted, so it is.
Not age restricted.
I'm sorry, it is income restricted, not age restricted, so it is for all ages. So I just wanted to make sure we were clear about that.
Another feature you didn't mention is that this project was heavily lauded for its proximity to for transportation. This is considered a transit-oriented development, and as a result, received additional, sources of funding because of its, obvious
Yeah, it's,
proximity to the train.
3-minute walk to the train,
Lots of bike parking.
lots of bike parking, interior and exterior bike parking.
We have more questions. We'll go to the questions.
So the additional funding that you just spoke of, does that put any other restrictions on you or quotas that you have to fulfill?
No, that's a very good question, but no, it's really about the location of the site, being in proximity to so much transit.
The green line.
So it's just really for the state to incentivize people to build more housing near transportation centers.
There's one more.
I'd like to ask all of you to move yourself closer to the microphone.
Yep.
Or pick up the microphone and move it closer to you. They are not working at this part in the back.
Okay.
Test.
Yes. How's this? All right. Sorry about that. Another question. This is the best part.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question about AMI, because
Yes.
I don't understand much about it.
Sure.
A little bit.
Mm-hmm.
More than I'd say. So with the, for example, with the Westcott, 30% maximum income would be $34,300, correct? 60% minimum income would be $55,749 to whatever.
Right.
What happens to that person who falls in between?
Right. So unfortunately, if someone falls in between programs, they might not necessarily qualify for either. There isn't necessarily an overlap in those programs. That's right, because you go from 30 to 60 to 110. There's also a gap there between 60 and 110, and 110 to market.
Well,
So
but just to be clear, so when the initial application comes in, the resident needs to be either 60% or lower, or 80% or lower, or 100% or lower. If at a point when they're living in let's say you were living in a 60%, you were 60% AMI when you moved into a 60% unit. If your income goes up while you're still a resident, you're now an over-income tenant, and you cannot be evicted for being over-income. There's restrictions on how an over-income tenant is treated, and you don't get evicted for, so
That's
I mean,
correct.
it's really important to understand that the initial applications are meant to fill these units with people who can pay at different levels and to achieve the mix of incomes. And, the operating budget for the developer needs to work.
Mm-hmm.
But if everybody wants people to be stabilized in their housing so that their economic profile can improve. And it is not a problem to earn more money. You don't get evicted. There's a way that these units are managed as people's income changes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
No, that's correct. Sorry. I guess
My question basically was, if somebody makes $35,400, they can't look at the Westcott. Am I correct?
So
with
you're,
that?
so I think,
No.
so I,
no.
go ahead.
Everyone should apply. There are other factors. So we would also ask a question about mobile vouchers, for instance, Section 8 vouchers. So anyone with a voucher is also welcome to apply. Anyone can apply to the property. And once we get the application, we look at the household income, the household composition, how many people in the whole household, and place them on in the lottery. Once the lottery is complete, on every type of apartment, bedroom size that they qualify for, and income level that they qualify for. But that was correct. If someone's income does go up, there are rules set in place where incomes can go up to a certain level. No one is ever evicted because their income goes up after they move in, as long as everyone's honest on their application. We assume people are. So that's not an issue. And I apologize. I thought you were asking a different question. Yep.
I have one other question. I'm reluctant to say it in a room, but I'm concerned, so I'm going to ask it anyway. I was in a building with a large group of people who were talking about the Westcott, and they mentioned there was some kind of problem with access, like for fire department access.
No, we've worked really closely with.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I heard that a lot of people did. I just wanted to confirm that it was.
Yeah, the fire department is very specific about access to the building, and both access and design. So they make sure down to the foot that they have the turning access and et cetera. Yeah, no, we're happy to answer that. There's another question in the front row.
I'm fine, I can. Okay. I have a quick question. So if you've done the application and you don't get in because it's all filled, do you get put on a wait list automatically?
Yes. Yes. And also if you happen to miss the lottery deadline, we still accept applications. We will continue to accept applications. And basically what will happen to that lottery list is it turns into a waiting list, and the folks that were not on the initial lottery list are placed by date and time like you would typically see in any waiting list going forward.
And I would just encourage people to, I hope everyone can hear. I would encourage people to please apply, because you hear these big numbers, and Joe and I were just talking before this that we did another project where, we took 400 applications to fill 40 units because people change their minds, people move somewhere else. So even if the lottery's closed and there's a wait list, I would still encourage people to apply for units at any property.
There's a state level database that has recently come online called Housing Navigator. And the great thing about Housing Navigator is somebody who's looking for a unit can look basically all over the Commonwealth for a unit. But maybe the frustrating thing for a new development is you don't know how many people have applied that have also applied for things all over the place. So I think, the great thing is that this information is available for people to find units elsewhere. But to bolster Lauren's point, you just get on the list, because you don't know what at the end of the day is going to be the result. It's a website. It's called Housing Navigator. Yes.
Yep.
I believe it is housing.
I believe so.
HousingNavigator.com.
I believe it lists all upcoming and current lotteries as well. So it'll list upcoming projects throughout the state. Yes.
So question here. I understand that an annual evaluation of the applicants, like when you renew the lease?
The short answer is yes.
If that person's income is above the average, then you obviously going to adjust the rent. Is that correct?
So the rents are restricted by AMI. So if someone, the maximum rents that we can charge for particular programs are set by HUD and set by the IRS. So there's different programs, a handful of different programs involved. So there are maximum rents. So just because someone's income goes up to a certain degree doesn't mean that their rent's going to go up that same percentage.
So you still want to do like an annual evaluation?
The answer is, another politicky answer, it depends. So it depends on the program. So some of the programs, most programs require annual recertification. So that's correct. The state's workforce housing program only requires recertifications every other year. So that's the 110% level. So there's a little difference between those two.
So the lease terms would vary if you do an annual recertification?
Lease terms. No,
The lease terms would not vary, no. Just that recertification requirement. Everything else would be the same.
Yes.
Right.
We sign, yeah, all of the leases will be 12 months initially, yes. If you want to answer that, you can.
Sure, yeah, that's a really good question.
Need to hold that up, sorry.
That is a good question. We do a study to, estimate what electricity costs are. It's all electric property. And that is factored into the rents that are charged. I think is the easiest way to say it, that yes, that is factored in.
David?
Hi, Lauren and Joe. Thank you for being here and sharing so much important information about the Westcott project. Just one simple question: are animals allowed in these new units?
Yes.
Yes, they are.
Any size restrictions?
I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe for dogs it's either 50 or 65 pounds for dogs, yes.
We have a pet spa, if you'd like.
We do have a pet spa.
To wash your dog, we have a pet spa.
That's right.
Fantastic. Thank you.
70? Oh, okay, see, that's why I said don't quote me. I was off. It was 70 pounds. So yes, dogs, cats, typical household animals are allowed, yes. One in the back.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
The lottery you said is in January. Applications are available online. Are they paper and pencil as well?
Yep, so we can go back to that screen if you like. So applications are online. Also, applications are available at Swampscott Public Library, Town Hall, and also at Cobba Hill Apartments, which we manage in Lynn. But you could print it from our website and scan it and email it to us with a signature. Just as a reminder, make sure that everything is complete. If there are blank spaces, if the application is incomplete, we will try to get back in touch with you repeatedly by email, by phone, by mail. But we want to make sure that each application is included in the lottery. So make sure that each blank is filled out.
And do they have to be scanned and emailed, or can they be physically dropped off?
It can be physically dropped off, yeah, at Cobba Hill Apartments in Lynn. The address is on the screen and in the application package.
And I believe our model unit will be open by February. So you're welcome to come and see it if that helps. And we'll have a leasing office open there as well.
Right.
I'm just confused because it says January for the lottery, and then it says December for the deadline. So
That's right.
Right, so the lottery is literally a lottery. So in order to be ready to do the lottery, to do the actual choosing, they have to have all the applications in and sorted and gone through and make sure they're all complete before that. That's all.
So you do one, you get it done, send your application in, then you go to the lottery. Got it.
That's right. Yeah. So as long as the application is complete and you qualify for one of the programs, you're in the lottery. So once you apply, you will get correspondence from us, likely by email and by mail, that says essentially, thank you for your application. This is your application number. We look forward to the lottery. By the way, you do not need to be present for the lottery. Lottery numbers are assigned, and then after the lottery, we sort all of the various types, bedroom sizes, all of the programs, and then we start contacting folks about coming in and verifying income. So all of that will happen. We'll have the lottery in January. After all the sorts and everything are done, we'll start calling people in January, February for May, June move-ins. There's a lot of steps involved. That's why we have to start so far ahead of time. Another question?
Is there on-site management and is there security?
So, yes, so there will be on-site management. So, yeah, generally they'll be there Monday through Friday, but it could also be Saturday as well. During the lease-up, we'll probably be there 6 to 7 days a week. Security, a full security camera package. Currently do not have plans for on-site security guards.
Is there, for the other population that is going to be living there, can they sublease at any point?
No, you have to live at the property. Yes.
Not the 42%, but the other percent, they have to live there as well.
They need to live there as well, yes.
And we're asked whether we drink or have criminal records. Are they asked that as well?
It's the same application. So there's some HUD questions that we have to ask. There are certain HUD restrictions on that. That's why the question's asked. Yep. Everyone goes through the same background check.
Does anybody have other questions? You know, if you want any general questions about development or about Swampscott affordable housing, about the Rashawn, about public housing, anything else that you might want to discuss or learn about tonight?
Yes. Yes.
But you can still apply.
Sorry. Yes, but the waiting list is open. It is age 55 and older. And if you're interested in applying to join the waiting list, you can call Arlette at the number listed on the screen.
I just want to make a quick little plug too regarding the pickup applications for the Westcott at Swampscott Town Hall. You can do that at customer service where you pay your bills. I'll make sure that there's a constantly free-filled printed stack of applications there. And then if you have any specific questions, you're more than welcome to swing by my office in community development, also on the first floor, just down the other end of the hallway. So.
My question is,
I'm just going to say, and also at the senior center as well. Well,
I'll be quick. The future of Swampscott Housing Authority, is it going to remain in Swampscott? Is your office always going to be in Swampscott?
I think that's our charter. We will be in Swampscott. We are looking at plans to do some different developments here in Swampscott, some different lands. As I mentioned, our family housing is if you look at my list of my waiting list, I've got 60,000 people on my waiting list. And out of that, a majority of them are vouchers, which we handle some voucher work. But a big majority of that is family housing, which is a huge need. We have about 17,000 families on our waiting list. So anything that we could do a mixed income development, that would be really good to help alleviate some of the high cost of rent in our area. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Actually, I have a question.
Sure.
For you. So if somebody's already done an application with DHCD,
Hmm?
do you still have to do the CHAMP application?
You do, yeah.
yeah, sorry. So can you, do you mind?
That's okay. No, if somebody's already done an application with DHCD, do you need to do a CHAMP one as well?
Well, it depends if you want to get into state-aided public housing. I think the DHCD, I used to help run a homeless shelter, and that's more for getting people that are vulnerable into state program, federal programs, for instance. The state set-aside or the state aided programs would all come through the CHAMP. Yeah.
So you can start at CHAMP.
Start at CHAMP.
I have a question for Westcott. Does the rent include electric or anything? What is included in the rent?
The rent is the rent only, but the utilities are factored into the rent calculation. So for the affordable programs, there's a maximum rent that can be charged, and then what's called a utility allowance that's deducted from that maximum. So it's factored into what we're allowed to charge for rent. So it would be rent plus utilities, electric, phone, cable, internet.
Great, thank you.
I would say with our housing, all our utilities, all the water, all the electric are provided. And we're very similar. We have residents, actually, we probably have one of the best resident service coordinators in the state at the Swampscott Housing Authority. And one of the things that we've really been working on is aging in place. I know you just did something about that. And really keeping people in their units for a long time, because it is very difficult to find places as people age out. And that's where a resident service coordinator comes in very handy. So.
One of the things that I've been doing a lot of in my regular day job is, in addition to, family housing and affordable housing, just transit-oriented, is also looking at supportive housing, which is, it's a little bit more than, resident services. It's really trying to target populations that need very specific housing-related services, people who are coming out of homelessness, people who have very specific health issues, people who are fleeing domestic violence. There are different kinds of supportive housing as well. So I think just something to keep in mind, that these are other agenda mandate items that the Commonwealth wants to fund. They have a whole entire funding round that's dedicated to supportive housing, and they've been and also shelters now as well. So, it's everything. It's family housing. It's housing for young professionals who want to relocate. It's housing for people who are struggling with homelessness. And everything in between. And so each of these projects kind of tries to hit a different population and address that with the kinds of services. And so anyway, just so you know, and I think the veterans housing concept will really dig a little deeper on supportive housing type of programming.
And we did also want to say that, Wynn has several other properties in the area. We have a big presence. We're working on more properties in this region. We have a few developments happening in Salem right now that are kind of, 3-4 years down the line. But, we have a lot we have project in Lynn. I mean, Joe can talk a little bit more about all of our existing projects in the area, since he's the expert. But I encourage you to also look at our website if, the Westcott isn't exactly the right one for you. Maybe there's some other affordable housing we have in the area that may be good.
Yeah, so unfortunately, nothing that's going to open anytime soon. But as you mentioned, we have 2 upcoming projects in Salem. One right on the waterfront, mixed income type of property right next to the T station. That also includes the rehab of a couple of historic buildings across the street. We also have a project coming up on a piece of the the Salem State South campus. We're partnering with Avalon on that, and our piece of that project will be about 100 units of age-restricted 55 plus. Unfortunately, as we've said, that's probably 4 or 5 more years down the road, but that is happening. And also recently, we announced, or there was announced, some funding for a project. We're partnering with New England Homes for the Deaf in Danvers, so that specific population will have a preference for deaf and deafblind folks working on that campus. So a lot to come for us. So, but we're looking forward to joining the community here, so thank you.
Yeah, and I would say, as I think was kind of mentioned before, that the Westcott does have a local preference requirement, so there is preference given to people who live in the town of Swampscott. So just keep that in mind.
Question. How many applicants, do you typically get more applicants than you have spaces? And if so, to what extent do you get more applications than you have spaces?
I don't know if was that for us or for everyone?
Well, speak to the Westcott and other examples of mixed housing like that. What has been your experience between count of applications and people who get accepted?
I have to say it depends again. I'm sorry. So we get generally, for example, we had a lottery in Lawrence recently for 86 units. We received there were 1,200 applications on the lottery list. But in that same lottery, Lauren spoke about it earlier, for our 1 bedrooms, specifically our 60% 1 bedrooms, there are about 40 of them we had over 200 applications for those particular units. We processed or went through all of those applications and had to go to a secondary list. So yes, we get a lot of applications, but there are pockets where we may go through everyone on the lottery list and move on to the secondary list.
We've had a similar experience outside of the city of Boston. In the city of Boston, the lottery list tends to satisfy the lease up. In more suburban locations, we often go through the folks that are selected through the lottery and then move on to the additional people added list. So in essence, if you're interested in living at the Westcott, please apply to their lottery. This is your best chance.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah, and I agree. So you can apply now. I had another thought, but I lost it, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, and just so you know, it's Wynn and B'nai B'rith both do amazing work in the region, and there are other developments that will come online within the next year. There are a number of nonprofits on the North Shore that have active developments in Beverly and in Salem and in Lynn, and they all experience the same pressures on the lottery, the same ratio of application to people who actually can fill the units. So again, if you look at Housing Navigator, you'll see as some of these start to come online. I just closed a project, the financing for something that's being two separate redevelopments of historic schools in Salem, and one of them will be age restricted, and one of them has artist preference. And, maybe it's a total of 40-something units. It's not going to change everything, but, that plus the next keeps chipping away at it. So you should definitely keep an eye out for these. These are really lovely developments done by very, very excellent developers.
Thank you, Kim. I would also say to look on Housing Navigator, because we're actually required now by the state to put every single one of our projects on there. Every affordable project is on there. So you're not going to find a better resource anywhere else. That's where all of the affordable housing is listed. So, and you can probably, I'm sure, search by age restricted or income restrictions, but it should all be on there.
I don't know if this applies to anybody else, but if you're allowing dogs, and I love dogs, and what if people's dogs are barking and driving them crazy? What do you do?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll repeat the question. So the question was about dogs and dogs barking and what do we do? And noise in general, yeah, I mean, it's especially if you're moving from a single family home, your own home, to apartment living, it's an adjustment, right? You have people next to you, most likely. You have people above you. You may have a dog below you. So just like any noise, dog barking noise would be addressed in the same way with the on-site management staff having a conversation with the pet owner, speaking to the neighbors if there have been complaints, and escalating, again, as with any other lease violations. So if there continues to be issues with the pet lease violations and stronger notices, going to court if we have to, all of those same things that we would do with any other lease violations. But really, no one wants to end up in court. So we try to work with every resident to help alleviate that. But yes, especially if you're coming from a single family home to an apartment life, there is certainly an adjustment for noise and people above you. Yep, you're welcome. There's one more question in the back. Yes. Everyone will be required to sign the pet policy. There will be, I don't know if we want to get into reasonable accommodations. Maybe I'll just leave it there.
So
pet horse.
this has been great. You really came with some excellent questions, and we really appreciate your interest in these developments and also just in housing in general. Are any more questions? I know it's been a little over an hour, and so sometimes it's just time to be done. But I know anybody here on this panel is always available for additional questions. I think you can call the management. You can actually call the manager of the Mashon. We can all be reached. So if other
And
things come up.
if you have any additional questions, I would encourage you on the Westcott Swampscott website. There's an email address for the property that we check daily, and we respond to those emails. So just if anyone has anything that comes up, just send an email. Don't be shy. We're available.
One more question. Yes.
I have a question on topic, off topic. I think this was on the Nest, so, you know, anything you read on the Nest isn't gospel, right? Just like the...
It's like the Facebook group. It's one of the Facebook
Right.
Fun, okay.
It's kind of a fun place to just comment on stuff anyway. But I think I had read on the Nest that Mr. Wynn, Wynn Properties, was in process of doing something with the Marblehead Housing Authority. Was that factual or?
You know more than me.
I think that's something that's in very, very early stages. It's not a project that I work on, so I don't know.
Actually, it's like real. I mean, and this is worthy of conversation only in that I had mentioned earlier that sometimes housing authorities can team up with private developers to do redevelopment. And in fact, Wynn is working with the Marblehead Housing Authority on just that. I don't know how many units it's going to be, but it's pretty exciting because it's exciting because
Yeah.
Right.
redevelopment of housing authority property is something that needs to happen. And I think the best way to get some of the funding that you can use is through that private developer channel. So.
Yeah, 'cause we have a lot of public housing that, is 50, 60, 100, 80,
Old.
100 years old,
Right.
needs to be redeveloped, and a lot of times we will do, a public-private partnership to make that.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting.
that's real.
And just for the people in this
I was like,
room
I've
that
heard
do
about
go on the Nest, that thing about the safety issue, not that I'm taking over the meeting, but I am. You know I would, Kevin. The thing about the safety issue with the fire, I was there as they were building, I'm still there. I live at Doherty Circle, so I'm there. And the fire chief from Swampscott was there before they even put a stake in the ground to make sure that indeed they could reach every part of the Westcott. And they were precise.
Yeah,
So
they don't allow
maybe
us to
don't
open.
worry about anybody here that's worried about the safety of it, that's reading that on the Nest. Just ignore it.
So the story about the story about Marblehead is correct, but I frankly I know what you know at this point. It may or may not be in my portfolio, and I'm in operations, so I don't get involved for quite a while. But yes, the fire department will not allow us or any other new building to open without multiple inspections and blessings. Yeah.
You're in charge. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
One
for
more
coming.
plug about next weekend. Next Monday. Just wanted a quick overview of the accessory dwelling unit discussion. Given that we've spoken about affordable housing tonight, one of the unfortunate main takeaways is that our affordable housing supply stock is very limited. And, that's the same across many communities here in the state. And in talking about accessory dwelling units, we are going to talk about creative ways that if you're a property owner, you can create an affordable housing opportunity out of your own property. It would allow you to age in place and possibly live with family members of your own of different generations. So if that's something that you are interested in, we would welcome you join the discussion. We're excited to have you back. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.